Okay, I believe we're good to go now.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. It is 7:01 on Tuesday, April 12th, and I call to order the 2095th regular meeting of the City of College Place City Council. And will the clerk please take roll call?
Yes. Councilmember Jessup,
Present.
Councilmember Cleveland,
Present.
Councilmember Peterson,
Present.
Councilmember Espinosa,
Present.
Councilmember Williams,
Present.
Councilmember Sherman,
Present.
Councilmember Boyle,
Present.
Mayor Hernandez is with us also. We do have a quorum. We also have City Administrator Rizzatello, City Attorney Colwell, Finance Director Carlton, Deputy Finance Director Schmick, Public Works Director McAndrews, Fire Chief Winter, Community Development Director Rickard, HR Manager Doring, Deputy Clerk Sherry St. Clair, myself, City Clerk Nisel, and we have with us Emily Brown and Megan DeBolt from the Blue Zones today. We are good to go.
All right, great. Welcome, everyone. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. It is now time for public comment. Did anyone submit a comment, or would anyone in attendance like to speak?
No one submitted a comment. If anyone in attendance would like to speak, you just have to raise your hand. I don't believe we have any takers.
All right, great, thank you. Then let's move on to the consent agenda, which consists of the agenda for tonight, April 12th, 2022, the council minutes from March 22nd, 2022, the council minutes from April 5th, 2022's workshop, the feasibility study to evaluate regional wastewater alternatives, the salary ordinance update, including the Parks Worker 3 position, and the February 2022 check register and financials. Are there any items that the council would like removed from the consent agenda at this time? All right.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
A second, Councilmember Boyle.
Great. First and a second. Any additional or any comments or questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. The ayes have it. The motion is passed. We do not have any presentations tonight, so we're going to move on to public hearings. And we have two of them tonight, starting with the ambulance utility by Mr. Carlton.
Thank you, Mayor. I need to share my screen, but it's giving me an error saying you cannot share screen. Well,
I just changed it. You should be okay now.
Thank you. For the sake of I know we've been through this numerous times. For the sake of the public hearing, I prepared a presentation to go through a synopsis of where we're at on the ambulance utility. Here's a listing of the RCWs, has statements about how we have to enact a ambulance utility. It authorizes City Council to set and collect rates and charges for regulating, operating, and maintaining an ambulance utility, requires that rates and charges be based on a cost of service study, which we completed in 2018, and I updated it this past year. It does not allow for capital costs for construction, major renovations, or major repair facilities. It categorizes costs by availability of ambulance service and demand placed on the service. It also has exemptions for Medicare eligible persons in a nursing home, boarding home, or adult family home, and persons who receive in-home service. The approach for the ambulance utility is availability costs include basic infrastructure needed to respond to a single call for service and includes dispatch, labor, training equipment, patient care supplies, and equipment maintenance costs. Demand costs are based on the burden placed on the ambulance service by individual calls. These costs are based in the calls for service by each customer class. Availability costs are uniformly applied across customer classes. Here is a chart showing where we're at on our cost allocation. We're required to allocate our costs between fire and EMS for any shared costs. And this is showing the total actual amounts for 2021 and the 22 budget. And there is a change in the 22 budget because in the budget, as you recall, we included the 4 additional firefighter EMS into the budget. It also shows the incident count and the percentage of counts based on EMS in total, as you can see it. For budget, we included it at 75% for EMS, 25% for fire. And then there's the total allocation between fire and EMS at the bottom. We took those costs and we bring it into what the direct costs for revenue and expenditures for the EMS. We're currently in 2021 actual and 2022 budget. You can see the total revenues last year at $738,000. The budget for 2022 is $688,000. Total expenditures last year were just under $502,000. This year anticipated at $849,000. That, of course, includes the additional personnel and associated costs. You can see the net costs as it rolls out, and then the shared cost allocation. The net result is that based on those additional staff required to operate the EMS and fire, we need an additional $500,000. And that was the whole intention of bringing the ambulance utility to the city, is to cover those costs. We do in this scenario, the current expense fund does still maintain, and is required by RCW to maintain their amount they support the fire, and that's around $400,000 a year they support fire EMS. And without the ambulance utility, the current expense could not fund that $500,000 in perpetuity. So what this all comes down to, and we've had many discussions on this, is what our rate options are. We've identified 2 rate options. One is a rate based on the demand and availability of EMS and charged on a per ERU basis to each customer category. The ERU is derived from a single family home average square footage, which in Washington state is 1,985 square feet. So based on the county tax documents of square footage, we took those numbers and divided it by the total amount of square footage to come up with the ERU basis by customer category. For example, a single family residence, they get one bill, they're one home, and they're be classified as one ERU. And then all the other categories are based on that assumption of their total square footage divided by the 1,985 square feet to come up with an ERU. The second option is based on the number of utility accounts. So we take the same availability and demand costs and just divide that by the number of utility accounts to come up to a charge. Some advantages and disadvantages of those methods. Advantages are it's consistent application across customer categories in that they're charged based on both their demand charge and availability. So if there's people that use the service get charged a portion. If you recall in the last presentation, there was a calculation that showed that the amount of, there's about I think it was a 30 to 70% split between the demand charge and the availability. So we took the $500,000 and divided it by the number of incidents to come up with the demand charge. Then the balance of that the balance of the costs were allocated based on the availability. That means the time that they're sitting waiting for the next call. The problem with that method is more difficult to calculate. And of course, that rate is going to change over the years as that demand portion would fluctuate between the different categories. The second charge based on the utility counts, it's easy to calculate. We know how many customer accounts they are. Each account gets one charge of the utility costs, and it's consistent across all categories. It's easy. The information's in Springbrook and is very similar to other methods used by cities in Washington State. The disadvantages of that method, it doesn't account for properties with multiple units per single billing. So if there's one billing for an apartment complex, then they would only get charged one charge because it's one charge per billing account. It's the highest rate for a billing customer, and it's not associated to who consumes the service. Here are the incident numbers we used in the calculations. It shows the average over. Of course, we don't have 2021 actual, and we don't technically budget the amount. So these are the actual numbers, and you can see the split between fire and EMS. And that relates to the allocation of those dollars. And you can definitely see the increase in, I'm sorry, that 2021 budget should be 2021 actual. Those are the actual numbers for 2021. EMS, you can see a substantial increase in the total number of calls in 2021, and that number is not anticipated to go down. So here are the different rate calculations based on the two methods we are putting before you. You can see the demand charges, which is based on the incident count, and the percentage based on those categories. And those categories are the ones that are used in the fire database to track calls. So we use those consistently. So you can see the 70,000 of the $500,000 allocated amongst those different entities, with the majority of the money going to, or the demand going to multifamily and nursing homes. The balance of that $500,000, the 430,000, is allocated based on that ERU calculation I just explained. So based on that square footage of the homes or properties, commercial or the schools, et cetera. So you can see the allocation of the costs amongst those groups, and then the total charge. And then that's allocated out per each ERU for a total cost. And you can see what the cost would be per monthly cost and yearly cost for each ERU. Single families would be $684 per month, multifamily $817, nursing homes $5602, commercial $764, and that means the city, colleges, and schools at $727. And then it has been recommended that we don't implement the full charge in the first year. We only implemented it in thirds, starting July 1st at 33 1/3%, and then in January 2023 at 2/3 and January 24, the full charge. The second approach is based on the number of utility accounts. Currently, we have 3,127. We know the deficit is $500,000. You allocate that out, you just divide. That comes up to $159.90 per year or $13.32 per month, and then allocated based on that same phased billing approach. And here are some examples of the rate calculations. You can see at the two options. One is the demand availability, and the second one is based on the number of accounts. So you can see definitely the major changes would be the nursing homes based on the secondary method. You can see based on the number of accounts they have that the charges are materially different. Pretty consistent. Among some of you see the commercial pays less, but ultimately the differences are absorbed by the single family and multifamily. Their charges are significantly higher, not a huge dollar amount, but on a percentage basis, significantly higher. Also the churches, the college ends up paying approximately the same amount under both methods. It's because they have a large number of accounts. They have 134 utility accounts, and each one would get a monthly charge. And then you can see that the City of College Place would actually pay significantly more because they have quite a few accounts. So those are the numbers that we calculated under both rate options. Some of the other cities in Washington State that have an ambulance utility, you can see some examples there. A large number of them do the number of accounts, and a couple, specifically Mercer Island and Port Angeles, use they call it ESU based on demand and availability. The next steps, well, tonight I have this in a little bit of an incorrect order. It should be, we're going to improve. Tonight we anticipate approving the ambulance utility rate method. And then the next meeting will bring up the establishment of the utility, and then the initial setup and startup of the process for July 1. That's it. Any questions?
That's it, huh? I'm a little nervous to actually say that's it.
Do we need to go back over any of that stuff? Just clarify, let me know.
Can you go to next steps again? I'm sorry, you said approve. I'm sorry.
Well, tonight we're taking to action in the next section is to approve the rate method.
Uh-huh.
And then the next meeting would be approval of the establishment of the ambulance utility, which requires code and.
Oh, got it. Got it. Okay, thank you.
We need to establish the rate method before we can establish the code, because within the code you have the rate method and the amount being charged by the different classes.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments from council members? All right. Seeing none, at this time I open the public hearing. Clerk, did anyone submit a comment in advance?
We did not have anyone submit a comment in advance. We do have an attendee with a raised hand.
Okay, so are you gonna go ahead and open them up? Okay, Mr. Taylor. You are on mute. Mr. Taylor, you can unmute yourself and share your thoughts.
Now can you hear me?
There you are. Welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Douglas Taylor. I've resided in the city of College Place since the 1970s, and I recently retired after working from Walla Walla University for over 43 years. Tonight, I wish to speak against the expansion of the ambulance service. I went back and read the city council minutes from 1987 and 1988, where they discussed the problems with the ambulance service. There were several problems they identified back then: the financial cost of the service, the difficulty of getting and retraining and retaining people to staff the ambulance, increasing regulations. They also mentioned the new 911 emergency services, and then finally a fifth category they just labeled politics. And then in 1989, the city council accepted that the cost of the service was just going to continue to increase and impact the city budget. And that's when they made the difficult and controversial decision to end the ambulance service. As I've read the current proposal regarding the ambulance service, I see 30 some years later, we still have some of those same issues and they're still not resolved. Back in 2017, when the discussion was about restarting the ambulance service, I believe council was told it would be under $70,000 per year, but it seems like the amount of income was severely overestimated. The costs, including the cost to the volunteers, were severely underestimated. And I still question whether the new proposal has correctly estimated costs and income. Today, we learned inflation has hit over 8%. So how was inflation considered in this proposal? And if inflation remains high, how soon will this issue be back before the council asking for a fee increase? Maybe I missed it, but I didn't see anything in the proposal to be covering any depreciation, major equipment replacement, anything to cover bad debt write-offs, or even the cost of collecting your ambulance accounts. I really question whether College Place is large enough of a city to maintain the level of service that's being proposed here. I own a small seminar company. I teach healthcare offices how to collect their patient accounts. And in my opinion, ambulance bills are the most difficult healthcare bill to collect. Many cases, it's not the patient who requested the service. It's an unexpected, unplanned expense. When the ambulance is run by a city fire department, a lot of people misunderstand and think their taxes are already paying for the services. They think the price should be closer to what a taxi would charge. Now, I'm not saying these are valid reasons, but I'm sure whoever's collecting your ambulance bills is already hearing these kind of excuses repeatedly. So I have 3 points today. Approximately 33 years ago, the ambulance service was discontinued for several reasons, and most of those reasons have not yet been adequately resolved, especially the increasing costs, the difficulty of finding and retaining adequate personnel, and then your increasing regulations. My point number 2, if the proposal to restart the ambulance service that was presented back in 2017 and 18 had included a utility fee of $80 to $160 per family per year, would this council have agreed to a utility fee and a major expansion of the department in order to provide the service? And then my third point, the cost of providing the service is going to continue to increase regardless of inflation because of the additional technology, regulations, cost of personnel. And so if council does continue to expand the service now, this council is going to be committing to further increases in the future. So I urge the council to consider this request as though it was the first request to restart the ambulance service and not just an expansion of the existing program. And then I further urge the council members to pause the ambulance service until the issues raised 35 years ago have been fully resolved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Okay, at this time, are there any additional discussions from council members? If not, is there a motion to close the hearing?
need to ask if there's any additional testimony.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you, yeah, because you said there was one. So is there additional testimony? Anyone liking to speak or anyone on the phone? Okay,
Okay, we do have
All right.
additional attendees, but apparently they don't want to testify.
okay. If you want to testify, please raise your hand, Ms. Schmidt. No, that was an accidental raised hand. Okay. All right then. Is there a motion to close the hearing?
Councilmember Williams, so moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second Councilmember Cleveland.
Great. Any additional or further discussions? Okay, all those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion is passed and the hearing is closed. Next, we have the Community Development Block Grant application for Safe Walk College Place, and Mr. Rizzatello will present on that.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. So this is something that's gone before council about every year. We do not have our own community development block grant program because of the size of the jurisdiction. So we're non-entitlement, which means that we need to compete for funds at the state level against about 200 other jurisdictions. The additional level of complexity with this, that typically only jurisdictions that reach 51% low moderate income are eligible for this across the entire community. We do not fit that. However, after much urging and lobbying a couple of years ago, the state revisited this and allowed considerations for census block groups that meet that statistic. We do have census block groups, 2 of them that meet that. So they're 9202.2 and 0.3, and that's the area bounded by roughly Academy Way and Bade to the west, Ash and Birch and Broadway to the east, the railroad tracks to the north, and then on the south side of it, roughly, if you drew a line where Sunny Drive is at. So over the past couple of years, we've been very successful in getting this grant program and pay for sidewalks. So we just wrapped up constructing sidewalks along Bay, Davis, and 12th Street with a grant we received about roughly 3 years ago. Last year, we obtained money, another increment of money to go build sidewalks over on Southwest 6th and Southwest 8th. And then this year, what we are proposing to do is to put in for some grant funds to go build sidewalks where gaps currently exist on Northwest B Street. And there's little pockets along B Street, roughly around the Ruby in Spagnuolo area. There's a gap over on the western extent, and then on the eastern extent, there tends to be one over near College Avenue as well. Also, there is a half a block gap of sidewalk on Northwest Ash, which is critical as that is a safe routes to school route, but yet there is a half a block of no sidewalk before one gets to the crossing of Davis School. So this grant proposal would essentially request that the state fully fund the construction and the engineering of these sidewalks. And then typically how we come up with a match, and this would hold consistent, is that any properties where we do this, typically the university owns or has ownership in, they have donated the right of way, and then that essentially counts as a local match, which demonstrates commitment, and then we get the grant funds. So this is basically another iteration of trying to get grant funds to go build some additional sidewalks in the core of our community. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Mike at this time? All right, I do not see any hands raised so there's no questions from council at this time. I will open the public hearing. And Lisa, did anyone submit a comment in advance, or is anyone in attendance would like to speak? Please raise your hand.
No one submitted a comment in advance.
Okay,
Do any of the attendees wish to speak on this matter?
and *9 will raise your hand if you're connected by phone.
We do have one. Hang on just a moment.
I see that. Okay, Keller, you are on.
Thank you. My name is Chris Keller, and I own a lot on Davis and 8th Street, right behind the Walla Walla Plant Services Building. John Rickard probably remembers the place. A few years ago, about 10 years ago, I thought about developing it. I've been in discussions with Nancy Riggle of Valley Residential Services, and we're talking in terms of maybe developing this lot with affordable housing, like studio apartments. And across the street from my lot is a group of duplexes that are owned by the HUD that are leased to Valley Residential. It's a program for veterans. And I recently found out that there's a half a street there, and the other half of the street is actually abandoned property. And then I would own the section that would be a sidewalk. And so I'm just putting out there to the council that we would like to see the city develop that street. It's not owned by anybody. They have to do like a quiet title on it in order for us to be able to develop the lot. And then we would gift the property for the sidewalk. And so I'll get a hold of John Rickard later and let him know about it. I think Nancy will participate in that conversation. But I just found out about this meeting and this grant that the city is applied for. And I just wanted an opportunity to say, we're interested in it too. And because affordable housing is such an issue for this area. And so I appreciate the opportunity to kind of put that out there, give John a heads up that I'll be contacting him. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. Appreciate you taking the time. Is there any additional speakers or anyone wish to comment at this time?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. Then if there's no additional discussion, is there a motion to close this hearing?
I'll make the motion to close the hearing.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Is there any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Right, the ayes have it and the hearing is closed. Thank you all. So we're going to now move on to the action items. And the first action item is the ambulance utility unit methodology, and Mr. Carlton's going to present on that.
Yes, I have the same presentation. I don't know if we need to go through it in detail again.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or would like a refresher on the methodology? Councilmember Williams?
I would just like to hear a response. I'm not sure from whom, to Mr. Taylor's comments about this not covering the right amounts and that we're just going to be back increasing it again. Because in my understanding is the amount had pretty well been set. We were looking at different options on how to fund it.
Sure. I'm not exactly sure what he's talking about either. We took the actual costs historically and the budgeted amounts for the next year between EMS and fire, and the numbers are the numbers. And we know what the costs are on any given year. Yes, there will be inflationary costs in the future. And at future years in the budget process, we'll have to look at whether that rate has to be increased to be able to cover the costs. I can't say that won't go up, but everybody knows inflation and costs do go up. I did have a quick look. He made comments back on the study done in 17. It was actually 2018. I'm looking at the similar scenario that they had, and you can see that in a single family, and they only looked at the option one based on the ERU calculation, and single family in that scenario forecasted for 2022 was $6.60 per month. Multifamily was actually lower at $3.29. Nursing homes was substantially higher at $129. Commercial was $19.96, and the public schools and stuff was $11.38. So that was their rates back in 2018, forecasted out to 2022. So I did not do an analysis of the comparisons of the cost then versus the cost now, because we're looking at what the real costs are in 2021 and 2022.
He also mentioned costs for replacement of vehicles and things like that. And
we're not allowed to include that in the ambulance utility.
Okay.
No capital costs are allowed.
Are those part of, we have the system where we put money aside every year so that then when it comes time to replace a vehicle, we already have the money? Is it?
Yes, that's in the equipment pool.
Yeah.
That we budget every year, and has a reserve balance in there that we use for future purchases.
So the ambulances are included in that?
The ambulance will not be included in this. Not the purchase of the asset, but the maintenance will be.
So, okay, I'm confused. I'm sorry. So buying an original ambulance, I understand, is a capital cost that we can't include in the utility. However, once we've bought the ambulance, will it be part of the equipment pool where we put in money every year?
Not any different than we're doing now, as I foresee.
So Brian, I believe it will be, because once we have the ambulance, it is now considered one of our vehicles, right? And we would budget for its maintenance accordingly just like the rest of our vehicles.
Well, my understanding was that it wasn't just maintenance, it was also replacement.
Well, regardless of that philosophy, it's not impacting the ambulance utility, because as you can see in the RCWs, the setting up of an ambulance utility does not allow for capital costs for construction, major renovations, or major repair of facilities.
I think my question is, he brought up a number of different kinds of costs that he felt were not accounted for. And my question is, between the utility and our budget, Chief Winters, Mr. Rizzatello, and Mr. Carlton, do you all believe that our costs are covered? And I understand about inflation, but as of now,
yes.
Or are we missing something?
I'm not too sure what costs he's talking about. The costs you see on this page are those revenues are actual. the expenditures are actual and of course, our budget is what we anticipate for this year. So our budget's based on historical numbers and then changing any factors we know will occur. And those are our actual costs. I'm not sure of what the gentleman was talking about.
Well, he had a specific list, and I think one of them was collections for the ambulance bills, which that's built in here, correct?
Yes.
It would be part of the, well, we don't really have any collection costs, to be honest, very few. We have a few write-offs of ambulance bills that are approved prior to being written off, but those are not really material at this point.
Ms. Colwell, do you have something you wanted to state at this time?
I was just gonna say, can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes.
okay. In the RCW that Brian mentioned, it states that the utility needs to be sufficient to regulate, operate, and maintain an ambulance utility. So that's the divvy there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Rizzatello and then Mr. Peterson had his hand raised.
Yeah, and I just again, this is very important decision. So I want to add a little bit into the history of like how this got here and everything. So as you recall, going basically from the very late 80s through basically 2000, City of Walla Walla had the basic life support and advanced life support license and was providing ambulance service to the whole county due to the EMS levy. However, right around 2017, they started going around to District 4 and us and other agencies being basically stating it's not enough. We need a significant increment, and the numbers were in the hundreds of thousands over this. At that point in time, since it really was a one-way discussion and there was no way to control costs given the fact that it's another agency, we're a combination, their full-time career. Our previous mayor, Harvey Crowther, worked with Department of Community Health, and then Burbank was giving up their BLS license to go at ALS. So the BLS became available, so we ended up getting that. After that time frame, we ended up doing that study with District 4 and City of Walla Walla about the whole Regional Fire Authority. To this day, you'll still hear the buzzword once in a while about that. However, if you read the study, and I mean, that when we presented it back in 2020, so it was Agenda Bill 20045, the issue afoot is differing business models. So if we were doing RFA as it stands right now, City of Walla Walla is career. They at the time they basically wanted it to stay career. So there's a lot more inherent costs since we're a combination. We have volunteers. We have now we need some additional full time because of the increase in call volume, which Chief Winter could touch on. But in general, because the economics of full career versus combination differs so much. If we did that Regional Fire Authority as that report stood, that would have been an additional 50 cents per 100,000 valuation. And then the messed up part was if you look at the economics as it stood in that report after 3 years, it was still going in a deficit mode where even if you created a Regional Fire Authority, you'd be back in this exact same position. Well, not you, the regional board. So I should recouch it that way, considering ambulance utility. So even though I know in many situations like regionalism does save money, a lot of it is based on what the business models are and if there's congruency there. And because they have full career, and at least through our discussions with them today, there hasn't been the entertainment of like looking at a combination. It's been a career on their side. So that's where the number discombobulation comes from and how we are where we're at. Because trust me, numerically, if it was the same business models and it was a way to regionalize, bring in the cost and get this thing tight, that would be the best way to do it, but it takes more than one agency to tango. That's a very brief synopsis of where we're at, but I just wanted to provide that clarity. And I think another important part is, again, that increase in call volume, because over the last couple of years, it's dramatically spiked as well.
Before we go on to Mr. Peterson, Ms. Williams, did that answer your questions?
I think so, as long as Chief Winters is content with the amount of money that we're trying to bring in.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Peterson.
Oh, it kind of goes back. I agree with Mike completely. Mike has a great summary. That was actually what I was going to ask you for, and I appreciate it. Is kind of what the comment I made during our workshop the other day. I guess a fatal error in the calculation between what was happening in the 80s, the 70s, the 90s, is that it's not that we're wanting now to expand some service. If I understand this, and Mike, please correct me if I'm wrong, it's we do this or we don't do this, but then we have an invoice from some entity for $500,000 or $600,000, and we're all standing around saying, well, how should we pay for this bill? Should we do a utility tax at $6.95 per? I mean, so the missing component here in that original comment that came through is that there were significant discussions before we went into this ambulance business, let's say, that we were going to get a bill that would probably exceed what our initial internal cost would be. It goes back to Mike's component of level of training, level of service, level of cost, and all that. So it's not apples and apples when you go back to the 80s and now. So key consideration, don't do it, but open the mail and get a bill and figure out how to pay for it.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Any other questions or comments from the council? Or Chief Winter, if you have anything you would like to add.
Oh, we've been talking about this ambulance utility, Mike, correct me, 4 years now.
3 years, yeah.
3 years. When we first started the ambulance, our goal was to operate in the black as much as we could. And up to this point, we have. We're still operating in the black. And so it's difficult for me to come with my hand out and ask for funding for this, but I'm burning through my staff and volunteers at a rate I can't maintain. I started in 1990. We went on 135 calls. We were a population of a little bit over 6,000 people. And you can on the chart here, we're almost pushing 2,000 calls. And at the rate we're going this year, we're going to be over 2,000 calls. That is a lot at whatever price to ask a volunteer to come from their home and do. And we're just trying to maintain the level of service we're at. We're not trying to increase. We're just trying to hold on. And we think that this fund and these personnel are enough to sustain us for at least the foreseeable future that we can even guesstimate. In all the time I've been here, it's always been 4 or 5% increase in call volume every year. And then last year it was 20%. And this year so far it's been 25%. We're hoping it's going to level off this year. It looks like that's starting to occur. But folks need some help, and we need our community. And I apologize that that's hard to swallow, but that's where we're at.
Thank you, Chief Winter. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion?
do we have a,
About, yeah, options, okay.
So you're wondering what the motion is on right now?
Yeah, the motion is only to determine what rate methodology we will be using.
Okay. So there's two of the rate options that were presented. Is there a motion for a rate option?
this is Councilmember Williams. I will move to approve the ambulance utility rate methodology using option 1, a rate based on the demand and availability of the EMS and charged on a per ERU basis to each customer category. The ERU is derived from a single family home average square footage. The average for Washington State is 1,985 square feet.
Peterson, second.
Oh. There any others? Any additional discussion? All right, so there's a motion on the table for option 1. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed for option 1.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, this was, thanks to everybody. I know it took a lot of work and a lot of considerations, months and months. So thank you all. Thank you, Chief Winter, for all the information you provided, and Mr. Carlton for going back to the table numerous times. Okay, the next is a resolution.
Mayor, do we need a,
Yes.
we need a council,
Did I miss something?
there was a motion and a second. Do we need to have a, I'm sorry, did we had the final,
Yes, we had a vote.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay, thank you.
That's okay. That's, I miss not having them.
No, I think it cut out. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so the next item is a resolution supporting the 2022 Community Development Block Grant application, and Mr. Rizzatello is speaking on that as his presentation previously.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, with this granting application, to be perfectly frank, this is how we fund sidewalks in this community via going after community development block grant funds. This is the next iteration. And the really methodology that we're going around is that there's a planning tool that the state uses where you can rank segments based on how it connects neighborhoods to business districts, public nodes, schools, things like that. So when we pick the segments, it's not like we're randomly pulling them out of a hat. There is a science to it. So this next go around is for the B Street duration and then Ash. But definitely build upon the earlier comments. We can turn in separated granting applications or even subsequent ones for other segments as well. But at least from a prioritization level, from the at least seeing historically where our applications have ranked. This application, as it stands before you, is the one that will likely follow the trajectory where we've gotten all the last ones funded. And I would mention to date, out of the CDBG program, we have gotten over the last 3 years almost $900,000 in state CDBG money to fund for the new sidewalks in these two block groups.
All right, thank you. Okay, any questions or comments from the council? Just use the button to raise your hand. All right, doesn't appear so. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion. Sorry about that. I make a motion to authorize resolution number 22-033, which authorizes the city administrator to submit 2022 state CDBG application for sidewalk College Place projects.
Thank you. Mr. Jessup?
I second is what I was going to say.
Okay. Any other, is there any additional discussion? We have a first and a second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Apply away, Mike. Next item is the ordinance prohibiting smoking and vaping at outdoor city permitted events as part of our Blue Zones community participation. And Mr. Rizzatello.
Okay, I'll provide a little synopsis of this and then turn it over to Megan and Emily. So as you all know, we are participating in the Walla Walla Valley Blue Zones project, and there's various initiatives to achieve healthy living in those that essentially live over 100 years old based on the studies that Dan Buettner has done. So as such, we've worked on a variety of initiatives. This is another one that was brought up by Blue Zone staff, essentially prohibiting smoking and vaping at city permitted events. You can also see attached some like letters of support dovetailing this proposal. We made sure that essentially followed the form and format of our code. I would thank the Blue Zone staff as Emily and Megan worked on the proposal of the actual code, and that's what's in front of you today. This was alluded to back when Blue Zones essentially gave the presentation a couple of meetings ago just on the first year and all that was achieved. So this was foreshadowed at that point in time and discussed at a cursory level, and it is before you today. With that, Megan, Emily.
Thanks, Mike. I don't have a whole lot to add. We shared some letters of support from a couple of community organizations in support of the ordinance. Essentially, in 2019 and in 2021, the city of College Place permitted 14 events, and pretty much all of them were for environments where youth are present. And so we'd encourage you to adopt this ordinance, which would require city permitted events to be tobacco and smoke free. Similar to the tobacco free parks, which are more socially enforced rather than being enforced by a code enforcer. You know, similarly, this would be kind of enforced through social norms and by including language in the special event permit application. So it really wouldn't require much from the city other than updating the application itself, but it could have a huge impact on the health of community members as far as reducing secondhand smoke exposure. And I'm happy to take any questions too. And I do want to thank City Attorney Caldwell for her help with the language. Wouldn't have been able to do it without you. It's pretty technical.
All right, Mrs. DeBolt, anything you wanted to add?
Megan let me know she had to step away for just a minute, although
Okay.
she is listening in.
Okay, that's fine. All right. So any other questions or discussions, Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, Mike or others, how exactly is this enforced? It's probably signage, communication, but how does this mechanically work?
I mean, really, for all intents and purposes, it's signage, and then essentially do stuff like this, and it's trying to make it more of like a social norm to get out of that, as far as discouraging the smoking and the vaping and the stuff like that. So I mean, really, it's trying to encourage behavior change and things of that sort. I would say with most of our codes. A lot of that ties back to where you can do infractions on stuff if like people violate it. However much like a lot of our code enforcement's been successful, it's essentially through getting things as societal norms and then essentially working with people and being communicative about stuff. So,
Great. Thank you, Mike.
yeah.
Can I add on to that too? So one thing as well is that we helped Lisa get some event signs, and so we printed some signs that say "Young Lungs at Play." This is a tobacco-free event. Thanks for not smoking. And so that can be an effective way to just remind people. I mean, if people are going to smoke, they're going to smoke. But this is just a way to help reinforce that social norm that promotes healthy behaviors. And then something that the city of Walla Walla did was to add language into their event permit application that just you check a box and say, you know, okay, I acknowledge that this event will, and then that's kind of, again, that reminder for people.
Anybody else? Oh, anyone else? Questions or comments? Ms. Williams.
Sorry, couldn't find the mute button. It's more a comment. I just really appreciate the including vaping in this. I was surprised. My son and I used to go to a regular race over on the west side every year, and one year all of a sudden everybody was vaping, and I had been under the impression that, you know, there wasn't like secondhand vaping, but I learned that day that even outside there is. So I really appreciate including vaping in it.
Ms. Boyle, did I see your hand go up or were you just moving? Okay. Anyone else? All right. Is there a motion then on this ordinance request?
I'll motion to adopt ordinance number 22-004, which amends chapter 12.04 of the College Place Municipal Code.
I'll second. Councilmember Boyle.
Great. Any additional discussion? All right, I don't see any. So all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, it's unanimous. The ayes have it and the motion is passed. Thank you, Ms. Brown and Ms. DeBolt. We appreciate you as always being here. Have a good evening. Okay, the next item is a contract with JUB Engineers for stormwater engineering assistance, and Mr. McAndrews is up now.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. So yeah, as you may or may not be aware, we are under a Department of Ecology stormwater permit and have requirements where we have to maintain our infrastructure and make sure we're, you know, not allowing pollutants down the drain into our creeks. So part of that is we previously had a stormwater engineering tech who moved away at the beginning of March and left us with vacancy. So to keep our permit up to date and to keep stay within compliance, essentially, we reached out to JUB Engineers and asked them for a scope and fee to help us in the interim until we can get that position revamped and filled. So JUB is suggesting putting together a presentation for city staff to help our maintenance folks essentially understand what to look for as far as just discharges and what to do if they see something. Creating a form to be used by our city public works inspector. So when he's doing stormwater inspections, you can check all the boxes and make sure that everything's done. Creating a handout for construction or contractors who are working on construction projects. So, you know, they can educate them on what they need to do. And then reviewing ecology comments and updating the enhanced maintenance plan and resubmitting it to ecology. So these are all things that if we do, we'll stay within compliance and we'll be able to set whoever we are able to find to fill that position up for success when they do get here. So we are working on making a few amendments to that job description and are planning to put it out as quickly as we can. And I'm hopeful that we'll get it filled, but I do expect that will take a little bit of time. So this is kind of our in the meantime situation. Any questions?
Any questions or comments for Mr. McAndrews? No, I think you covered it. So if there's no Questions or comments? Do we have a motion on this agreement contract?
Councilmember Jessup, I'll approve the JUB Engineers Agreement. I recommend action to approve the JUB Engineers Agreement for professional services to provide on-call support for the stormwater utility and allow city administrator to sign professional services agreement.
I'll second.
Wonderful, thank you. Is there any additional discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Thank you, Mr. McAndrews. Let's see, let's go on to the resolution supporting an application to the USDA National Resource Conservation Science PL 566 grant. And Mr. Rizzatello will speak on that.
Okay, thank you. So we found this grant program a couple months ago through the assistance of our on-call engineer, JUB. And the USDA National Resource Conservation Science Program, they have this program called PL 566, where they will hire a third-party engineer to do a return on investment study, where basically if they give all federal grant money of fixing up capital projects that improve stormwater and water quality upstream, where in essence it helps downstream agricultural users, and it meets a return on investment, they will fund capital activities, which naturally is of great interest to us because it, and I'm sure you all remember this from when the stormwater utility passed, but that utility essentially funds operation, maintenance, and it sets aside a limited amount for capital, but we premise trying to get grant money to fund the majority of the capital component. The return on investment study, they are nearing, I would say, the 75% mark on it, and it's looking pretty good. But the next issue to get this across the finish line is we need support letters from resolution naturally from this city council, but then also letters support pretty much from businesses, ag users, anyone to illustrate that there's public support for getting this level of grant money. To date, we've gotten about roughly 50 letters of support. So for our size of an area, it makes a compelling case. If we do meet their ROI, it'll fund capital projects in the Military Springs, which is that creek somewhat south of C Street, Garrison Creek, and Stone Creek watersheds. And that will dramatically help us as it'll fund the capital for a long time to come. So yeah, we're definitely making a targeted effort to qualify for this very expansive grant, and it only recently got fully funded in the latest federal ag bill, because before that this was like an unfunded grant program. So stars are aligning to hopefully get money to fund our stormwater capital in this method.
Mike, I gotta say, I am impressed with all those letters of support.
Thanks.
Incredible. Okay, any questions or comments from the council regarding this grant? All right, I don't see any questions. Then do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 22-034, which authorizes resolution of support for the city to participate in USDA Rural Development NRCS PL 566 grant program.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Peterson.
Thank you. All right, if there's no additional discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Thank you, Mike. Let's see, we're going to move on to the amendment to the Blue Mountain Action Council for the use of targeted ARPA funds. And Mr. Carlton's going to present on that one.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Back in 2020, when the federal government put out the CARES Act, we allocated $20,000 to BMAC to provide assistance, utility assistance supports to the citizens of College Place. That money was used up rather quickly. When we got our second allocation of funds under the ARPA program, which is totals about $2.6 million, council approved $50,000 to go to BMAC for financial assistance for the residents of College Place. To date, so that was back, I believe the last fall that money was allocated. To date, they've only allocated out about $10,000, just over $10,000 of that $50,000. They came to us trying to come up with additional methods, reaching out to residents for support. We actually changed the dollar amount, the minimum income amount for a household to qualify, and we just haven't seen the people using that program. BMAC approached us about making an amendment to the contract we have with them to try to go out and get a bit more assistance in the community. They came up with 4 additional items that they would like to pursue. The first one being is they would really like to have some targeted outreach and through our help identify additional residents that may need our help that aren't aware of it. That's one of the areas. The second one is that not only for utility bills from the city, they would also like to use additional monies to pay for garbage, internet service, rent, mortgage arrears, et cetera. We did have the mortgage arrears was actually in that first tranche of money through the CARES Act as well. The third area is they would allow to provide for essential emergency payments for items like driver's license renewals, copies of birth certificates that they claim are hindering people from applying and is really a big barrier for people. The fourth item is that they would like to allow BMAC Food Bank to fund backpack bridge meals for the Davis Elementary School students currently using the service. So those are the 4 areas that we would like to amend the contract and provide those services.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Carlton. Council members, questions or comments regarding this request? No. Okay, then let's move on. Is there a motion?
I'll motion to authorize the city administrator to agree to the contract amendment with BMAC to provide additional ARPA payment assistance to residents of College Place.
Second, Councilmember Boyle.
Wonderful. We have a first and a second. Any additional discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, it's unanimous. The ayes have it and the motion is passed. All right, next, Brian's going to present on the ERP system replacement.
Yes, and I'll share my screen with the presentation. I've updated the presentation that I gave at the last workshop, and we're asking for council to approve our moving to a new ERP system. I did update some of the numbers and did some investigation based on the information asked at the last meeting. Just the ERP system, as everybody knows, is what really automates and manages our business processes across finance, human resources, operations. It gives us better information and definitely integrates a lot of the different departments. Our current systems, this is what we are currently spending on what we call our ERP, but it's not a consolidated system. It's a number of different programs that we use to get the information we need. As of our at 500, Springbrook at 12,900. That number, of course, is going to change because under our current platform, we're going to have to make a change in the next few years to the cloud-based system, and that is upwards of $20,000 to renew at that same program, but in their cloud version. We have our document locator at 4,000, our iWork asset management at 10,500, NeoGov for our HR recruiting onboarding is $9,200. Express is our online utility bill payment systems, 11,000, and our Questica budgeting at 12,000. So it's costing us, around $60,000 a year for yearly subscription fees for those for that software. The reasons for change. Our current software systems are not integrated. We definitely have a problem with Questica budgeting. We have to manually enter that budgeting data into Springbrook. We do not have a customer reporting tool, so we spend a lot of time downloading spreadsheets and manipulating them to get the information the way we need it. The current ERP system does not allow data input from third-party software, which is basically driven from how the software was designed initially back in, I think, early 2000s. The current ERP does not easily allow for setup changes and customizations, and they will discontinue the on-premises installation in the near future, so forcing us to go to the cloud version or make a change at that point. Currently, the community development software is antiquated, does not offer any workflow or online processes. And that's been a big push for moving to a new ERP system, is get us up to speed with where technology is at and online features. Currently, we don't have contract grant tracking software, which this change would allow us to have that. Payroll and HR are not integrated. That's why we use the NeoGov third-party software. This again would eliminate that requirement. And then by having one integrated system, we eliminate those individual licensing costs. The goals of the new ERP system are to include business management that enables all systems to be integrated into one platform. Moves our software to a cloud-based system to improve security, program access from external sites, and improve data recovery. It enables high levels of integration across all business functions and departments. It provides for widespread sharing of data from a single information repository. Therefore, reporting, we can get through all the different areas, one reporting tool, and get a wealth of information. And it hopefully will drive, extensive business transformation, change management efforts. Definitely that duplicate data entry that we do in numerous areas will be eliminated. So the integration team process, we reviewed the current systems. We determined the wants, needs, and requirements of the software for each department. We researched software companies that met the needs of each department, and we really did focus on software companies that are in the government realm. We didn't look outside. It was asked last time whether we looked at SAP, and we did not look at SAP. They're not really into the government realm, and it was really cost prohibitive. We wanted to select companies. We selected companies for in-depth demos of their products, and then we rated each those based on predetermined criteria. And then our goal is to recommend a system that's both cost-effective and meet the needs of each department and the city as a whole. And then once a system has been approved, create an implementation plan in coordination with the software companies selected. These are the different areas that we used in our selection criteria. We used functionality and ease of use. Does the system meet the required functionalities? Does it provide process automation? Is it user-friendly? Does it integrate with other software? The vendor viability, how long have they been in the market? How long has the product been on the market? Is the product scalable? Also technology, how long has the company been in the market? Again, I looked like I duplicated those items there. But of course, the technology, is it the most current technology? And is it, you know, for example, cloud-based? Everybody's moving to cloud-based systems. The regional consistency in community development was a big area for community development. It allows us to be similar platforms with Walla Walla and Tri-Cities. Cost is you know, basic information split between deployment and yearly subscription fees. And then what kind of support and training do they offer? As well, the last section is industry expertise. How long has the vendor worked in the field, and has the vendor worked in Washington State? So the vendors that we looked at were Tyler Technologies, OpenGov, the next version of Springbrook, and our current version of Springbrook Express, but in the cloud-based version. And then we looked at Oracle initially, but it was very cost prohibitive. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and then plus implementation costs. Here's how we scored them. You can see it was at a score of 10 in each category, and that's the summation of the 4 scores. And you can see the total scores at the bottom, and then, of course, the maximum score in a rating scale. So Tyler Tech definitely came in at number 1. And, you know, all the other vendors were quite close. Really, the Tyler Tech provides us what we want, and it was a very attractive program for everybody in each department. Here is the system's costs. Tyler Tech, you can see their deployment costs are around $165,000 with yearly subscription at just under $60,000. And you can see that currently we're at about $60,000. So we don't, on a year-to-year basis, our costs will not go up, and then that will be fixed for the next 3 years. Our current costs are going to go up because we're going to, at some point in the next year or two, going to have to update Springbrook to their cloud-based version. And that's, like I said, is just under $20,000 was the last estimate. What we weren't sure of when we did our budget, the first year costs, the implementation costs are $224,000. For Tyler, we only budgeted $100,000. Oh, I'm sorry. The deployment was $164,000. We only budgeted $100,000 for the year for the deployment costs. That's, you know, we feel we have enough reserves in our tech budget to cover that. OpenGov, you can see, was considerably more expensive on both deployment and more than 50% increase in the yearly subscription fees. Springbrook Cirrus, very similar to where we're currently with the Tyler Tech, but the overall consensus was the Tyler Tech software was more integrated. The Cirrus product with Springbrook does not have a community development platform, and they used a third-party system called, I'm sorry, I'm just blanking on the name of it. Bachery, if you can remember, please chime in. And then the current Springbrook platform, which they're saying they're going to have a report writing tool out soon. It's still not out. And we feel we won't eliminate any of the additional software on the side. That's why the yearly subscription fee is up close to $90,000. Definitely the implementation benefits are, you know, we're going to streamline and eliminate some of those inefficient manual processes. Lauren, do you want to?
Yeah, can you go back a screen real quick? It's a simple
Sure.
question, I think. It's the 12,900 there, line 2, is that included in the Springbrook column to the right, upper right?
No, the amount that's up in the right is the updated version of Springbrook, which
Okay.
is that $18,000 numbers in there, or 19,000. It's the 60 plus the difference in the amount.
So if I understand this correctly, it's 96 plus 60, correct, currently? Or would be?
Yes.
So you're looking at 150, 160 compared to, yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah, there's not much, there's just a small deployment cost with upgrading to the cloud-based version of Springbrook.
Okay, thanks.
So just to continue, we feel it's going to eliminate those inefficient manual processes, you know, the having to download reports into Excel and produce them. All the manual processes that happen in community development will be online with online forms and paperless. We get rid of our document storage system, and everything's within one integrated system. So that goes on to the second point there, is that we eliminate any of those standalone systems that we won't need anymore, because it's all in one integrated system. The fourth point, establish a backbone structure that could be leveraged to handle all operational processes. That means in the future it's all integrated, and there's additional modules that we're not getting that at some point could be recommended if we deem we recommend it to council and you guys approve it. It integrates and increases control of budgeting, planning, and financial management processes. That's our Questica budgeting that currently we cannot integrate. It provides enterprise-wide reporting and decision support. It presents opportunity to lever vendors' future investments and enhanced functionality. Definitely one feature of Tyler Tech is that they're very progressive and constantly making upgrades and changes, which are covered in those fees. There isn't additional fees, at least in those first 3 years. And then it incorporates new functionality and technology. Definitely online access for the citizens and community development is a big thing we were looking for. So the next steps are we're bringing this to council to approve this, and then the next thing we'll do is contract with Tyler, and then develop an implementation plan. The goal is to go live on Core Financials January 1st, and then hopefully first or second quarter for community development. One thing I did after I did the presentation is I did contact Tyler Tech and asked them about the number of customers they have within the state of Washington, and they currently have 442 customers at all various different levels of size. And I think OpenGov are currently at, I don't know, 4 or 5 customers. They're just trying to move into the state. So one of the reasons they didn't qualify is they're really not up to speed on, the whole reporting to the state of Washington of the BAR system. So that's new to them. And Tyler Tech's been in this area a long time, so they know that requirement of the BAR system, cash reporting. So
All right.
any questions?
Questions or comments? Mr. Jessup?
Thank you again. I'm so happy that you guys be able to streamline some things and save personnel and that kind of stuff, and looking into it. This might be my own curiosity, but did you by chance happen to look into the different companies' cybersecurity as we're kind of closing the doors and creating kind of a streamlined system with one door of access? Or their customer service protocols, or their cybersecurity updates and their track record and that kind of thing?
Did not ask that question, that type of question specifically, but they do assure us that they're the latest, versions of security and their protocols. Maybe Mike can
Yeah.
He's more of an IT expert than I am. He could elaborate on that.
Well, I mean, I will tell you with Tyler, they are CGIS compliant, and which is a big deal. So I mean, they've handled police records, sensitive fire records, and then they also have the track record of essentially functioning in jurisdictions our size and bigger. So they have portals in Walla Walla, they operate in Pullman. They operate pretty much a lot of the agencies of our size are moving, pretty much they're moving over to them just because they are the more established game in town, frankly, where you have most stuff under a roof. And I would also urge that in addition to that, it also helps with the developers as well, because out in the Tri-Cities, they run the Tyler platform essentially has the background on a lot of your permitting portals. And that is a common complaint I've heard in the development community about, hey, why can't people like use the online portals so we can just do our one-stop shopping between jurisdictions? And this would enable that as well. So it's an efficiency tool, a security tool, and also a development tool as well.
That's awesome. That's great.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I do not see any. So is there a recommended motion from this recommended action?
Councilmember Espinoza, I move to approve the staff recommendation to authorize the city administrator to sign a contract with Tyler Technologies for implementation of a new ERP system.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Williams, second.
All right, did you get one, Lisa? Okay, all right. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
We're going to go over to Mike again to discuss a resolution supporting an application to the State of Washington Recreation Conservation Office Youth Athletic Facilities Grant Program. That's a mouthful, Mike.
Okay, thank you. So next couple of them are resolutions of support for several grant opportunities that have very close due dates, so we need to get these in. So this first one is youth athletic facilities. Now, typically when you have RCO grant opportunity with an open contract, usually your chances of getting a subsequent one when you have an open contract are minimal. However, with the youth athletic facilities, that grant program has been slow flush with cash. That pretty much any project that ends up on submitted that legitimately is a project and in the park plan ends up getting funded. So the general concept that was developed by Park Harbor and Rec Board is we do need improvements out of Veterans Park, out of Homestead. We tried to do what was best and get the playground equipment and other stuff from Haven Homes. But I would just say amenity wise, it's a sparsely populated park from an amenity standpoint. So Park Harbor and Rec Board, they are working on getting out a survey to the residents within that subdivision so we could glean the prioritization of what to go out there. But some ideas include the restrooms, which are in the capital facility plan that you all have passed, as is pickleball and basketball. And then the other item, which we are starting to have discussions with the homeowners association about how to facilitate it, is that hillside, because they own that right behind the park. But just because it isn't part of the park doesn't mean people aren't using it as that. There are residents using it as a sledding hill, except right now if you sled, you go into a fence. So it would probably be a good thing for us to like take the hillside and remove the fence so sluthers aren't going full speed into a fence. Just my 2 cents on that. So this grant application will be to make that a reality, but it is due soon. So I need a resolution of support from this body and the park board. They've adopted the identical one as well.
All right. Any questions or comments? All right, I do not see any. So is there a motion? Is there a motion on this resolution?
Councilmember Williams, I move to approve resolution number 22-035, which authorizes city administrator to submit a state youth athletic facility YAF grant application to the state's Recreation Conservation Office, RCO, for the Veterans Park renovation. I apologize, my cat was waving its tail right in front of me.
I'll second Councilmember Boyle.
All right, any additional discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, the ayes have it, the motion is passed. Next, Mike's going to present on the resolution supporting an application to the WSDOT pedestrian and bicycle grant for Whitman and Larch intersections.
Okay, thank you. So the next grant applications are very important. So every other year, WSDOT has 2 grant programs. So Ped and Bicycle Grant and then Safe Routes to School. Historically, we have not competed well because we did not have a local road safety plan. However, thanks to efforts of Walla Walla Valley Blue Zones, and then you all adopted it, we now have a local road safety plan. So we are going to score a lot better. And then in addition to that, with the transportation package that just passed Olympia, I'll be the first to admit there's when you look at like what is going into it, there's quite a lot of Eastern Washington was left out in the cold relative to the amount of money and things going into it. But the only silver lining in that transportation package is it quadrupled the amount of money going into these 2 grant programs, which means the going is good to get the state money. So this first one, this was a study done through that CURB grant we received a couple years ago to evaluate intersections along Larch. And as you all may recall, it's hard to believe so much time passed already, but in that study that was done back in like 17 and 18, they basically suggested that by 2023, traffic counts were going to be such that Whitman and Larch will really need like a stoplight to essentially facilitate the traffic. And because both those routes appear in the Blue Mountain Regional Trails Plan and the Local Road Safety Plan, there's multiple crash incidents in that corridor. It does qualify. So this is just a resolution of support to try to get some WSDOT money to put a signal over at that intersection.
All right, any questions or comments? All right, I do not see any. Is there a motion on this resolution then?
Well, I'm sorry, Peterson here. I have a question. Did I just see the roundabout?
I don't know why that's in there. That one is that one is for 12th and Larch. Now 12th and Larch, that eventually we will need to deal with that. However, the proposal on that is going to be when we deal with Southeast 12th Street as a full-on corridor. For this WSDOT Ped and Bike grant, we will score the best based on the crash incidents at Whitman and Larch.
Yeah,
So,
okay, no. So a taste of something for the future there. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay.
Coincidentally, I got an email on that today, so I'm going to pass it on to you, Mike.
Yep.
To keep it in your mind as we make plans, future plans. Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Do we have a motion on this resolution then?
Councilmember Peterson, motion to approve resolution number 22-036, which authorizes the city council support of a grant application into the Washington State Department of Transportation, WSDOT pedestrian and bicycle grant program to fund reconstruction of the 12th and large intersection.
I'll second.
It's Whitman and Larch.
And Larch.
Do we have the wrong one?
Is it
Yeah.
red wrong on the screen?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Action
Okay.
is incorrect.
I think it was incorrect in the file and I didn't catch it when I was
Well, that's fine. Should we
reading
redo
the
it?
packet.
Yeah, you want to amend it for Whitman and Larch?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would amend it for Whitman and Large.
Thank you.
I'll still second.
All right. Any additional questions, comments? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Next is the resolution supporting an application to the WSDOT pedestrian and bicycle grant for the post office crosswalk reconstruction.
Okay, thank you. So this one has been in our capital facility plan. This crosswalk is used by a variety of users. However, with the parking being pretty adjacent to the crosswalk and just the amount of traffic when school is in session, and if you examine a local road safety plan, there are incidents there, so it does qualify. So the general concept is to do some engineering and figure out ways to essentially make that crosswalk safer. It could be rapid flashing beacons or even bulb outs. Regardless, something needs to happen because that is a common complaint I've heard in the community. I mean, folks use the crosswalk, but just as it stands now, there needs to be additional safety enhancements. So that qualifies. So we're trying to get some grant money and make it happen.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Any questions or comments? Other than I'm glad we're considering this before somebody gets seriously hurt on this crosswalk. All right, if there's no question or comments, is there a motion for this a resolution on this?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 22-037, which authorizes city council support of a grant application to the Washington State Department of Transportation, WSDOT, pedestrian and bicycle grant program to fund improvements to the crosswalk in front of the College Place Post Office located at 500 South College Avenue.
Is there a second?
Councilmember Williams, second.
Yeah, you're lucky you didn't have to go reading that all. Any additional discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Moving on, Mike, to the resolution supporting an application to the WSDOT Safe Routes to School grant program for Davis School.
Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned, the size of the bucket of money for these grants is like nearly quadrupled. And examining the successful grant applications for safe routes to school, the two threads are A, having the local road safety plan adopted, which we do. But then the other thread as well is instead of listing improvements by corridor or street, frame it as in the improvements are occurring within a circumference of a school. It can be within a 2-mile circumference. So that's what we're attempting here. So we've split some improvements into circumferences around 2 school facilities. So this first one is Davis School, and the improvements, we've lumped several together that are within the 2-mile buffer, and it's things we've talked about for a while, making a reality. So Northeast Ash Sidewalk, now we're putting in a grant for CDBG. The hope is between both of them, we should get one of them, or if we have both, then it'll be a spectacular sidewalk. So that, also rapid flashing beacon at that intersection at Ash and Whitman. Northeast Damson, the rapid flashing beacon at Damson and Rose, because there is a school and Valley Transit bus stop up there, and then a sidewalk. We actually built a sidewalk as part of C Street project, but we ran out of grant money once it reached Cargill, so it would extend it from Cargill up to Rose. Southeast Birch, putting some sidewalking over there because a lot of kids walk down there, and that's basically a 1.5 lane road with no sidewalk between 2nd and 4th. And then another issue is that there's been multiple requests for a rapid flashing beacon at Whitman and Academy Way. However, the way this grant fund works, we can't advocate for it with private schools because WASDOT just has rules that way. So that's why I'm lumping this in with the Davis School request, because anything within a 2-mile radius is fair game. So with that is the request, just resolution of support, so we can turn this in and see what we get.
Questions or comments or suggestions of how to decorate a fancy sidewalk? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion on this resolution?
Motion to approve resolution number 22-038, which supports a Washington State Department of Transportation, WSDOT, WASDOT Safe Routes to School grant application for the Davis Elementary Safe Routes to School project grant. Thank you again, Mike.
I'll
Thank you.
second. Councilmember Cleveland.
Great, thank you. First and second, any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, the ayes have it, the motion is passed. All right, next is a resolution supporting an application to the WASDOT Safe Routes to School grant program for Sager Middle School.
This builds upon the previous resolution, except this is improvements within the 2-mile buffer of around Sager. Through Utilities and Transportation Advisory Commission, we've discussed about some crosswalk safety measures at that crosswalk at the western entrance to Walmart off of Lamperti, because a lot of kids from the high school and middle school are actually cutting through there and then going through Central. So to fund fixing that crosswalk and make it safe, also putting a sidewalk on Central that gets a lot of pedestrian traffic, but right now there is no sidewalk that whole duration. And then also rapid flashing beacon where that meets 12th, and then also trying to lump in figuring out a way to fund the Birch sidewalk from 12th to 4th. That one's been a challenge because with the other grant programs, that street straddles a block group that qualifies and another that doesn't. And per the state, if you're in the middle and one is like higher income, then it doesn't qualify. So this is one of the few grants where we may be able to make that reality. So that's just making these, trying to get the money to fund these improvements. So that's what this is about.
Job security for our Public Works Department. Any questions or comments? All right, do we have a motion on this resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 22-039, which supports a Washington State Department of Transportation, WSDOT Safe Routes to School grant application for the Sager Middle School Safe Routes to School project grant.
Thank you, Ms. Boyle. Do we have a second?
I will second. Espinoza.
Great. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. All right, Mike, we are on a resolution supporting applications to the federal infrastructure grants for reconstruction of both West Majornia Road and Southeast 12th Street.
Okay, thank you. So federal government, they've reclassified what was the Tiger, then the Raise, then the Build grant, where now they're calling it the Infra grant. In those past iterations, we really wouldn't have a good chance of being eligible and getting it. However, they've since reclassified and they put all these other buckets of grant money into one application. They actually have a carve out now for rural communities, of which we are considered one, and that carve out is by state. So we actually do have a decent shot at this. They are trying to fund projects over a floor of around 5 million. And you can do couplet projects, which means like trying to lump several projects together to reach that value. So with that, the general proposal afoot here is to put in a grant application, see if we could get some federal grant money to not only deal with the construction on Majanier, because we're already funded for engineering and some of construction, but actually finish it up. And then also 12th Street, both legs from between like College and Myra Road. So that's the general concept. All these projects are in the 6-year capital facility plan, which you all adopted, except they're strung out for several years because we thought we were going to have to turn in multiple TIB and other grants. And this may be a way where if we're successful, it's speeding it up some. So with that, that's really what is in front of you. Majanier Road cross section, which we've mentioned before and went through utilities and Transportation Advisory Committee. That's there, as is Southeast 12th. And yeah, that's pretty much what you see in front of you.
Thank you. Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll motion to approve resolution number 22-040, which supports pursuing and accepting grant funds for reconstruction of Southwest Majanier Road, College Avenue to Blue Foo, and 12th Street, College Avenue to Myra Road, College Place East-West Connector Project.
Councilmember Williams, second.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion is passed. Oh, all right, 1 hour and 50 minutes into it. We made it through our action items. We're going to move to our administrative reports. And we have 2 tonight. So the first is a resolution to adopt the ADA transition plan prioritization rubric. And Mr. Rizzatello is still up.
Okay, thank you. So with this item, just take a look at it and it'll go before council next meeting. So Walla Walla Valley Blue Zones, they are working with the Disabilities Network, representation from a variety of the public to try to assemble an ADA transition plan for us. Because the city itself is getting to the size where pretty soon here we're going to be required to have one regardless, except we're basically getting it for cost of an intern, which is a bargain. And Kuya is doing a great job on this. However, to get the final study done off the presses, it's taken a little longer than anticipated. So the final study will probably be ready to go before UTAC and through this body, probably later summer, my guess. And so we can still score well with these various grants and talking with the grant agencies, as long as you have some sort of an evaluation rubric that it still keeps you at the same points essentially that you can claim when they evaluate the grant application. So that's really what this is an exercise of, trying to ensure regardless we get the grant funds and we're able to move forward. So please take a look at it. If anyone has any questions as you're reviewing, let me know. There will be a legitimate, like full-size ADA transition plan study that'll be going before the UTAC and this body, but they'll be later in the summer and after those grants close, which is why we need to do this like sooner.
All right, thank you, Mike. Any questions or comments for Mike at this time? All right, I don't see any. Let's move on then to let's take a look. It's the first quarter of 2022 capital expense reports by Mr. Carlton and Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor. I will try to make this quick and have us done before 9. Really, all that there is, it's our capital facilities project is at 4%, which is normal because we're just getting started on that. Our IT budget is at 33%, or I'm sorry, 32% for the year, which is also normal because we have a lot of memberships and subscription fees that happen within the first quarter. And then for the ER&R, we're at 33% of the approved budget. And that mainly has to do with purchasing the fire truck, which was a little under $700,000. If anyone has any questions.
Questions or comments? All right, we're moving a little too fast here. I'm getting nervous. All right, so let's take a look. We have, thank you, Desiree. We have no informational reports, and we do not have an executive session tonight. So is there any other business for good of the order? Chief Winter.
Yes, I just wanted the council to know that tomorrow we are going to drive over and pick up our new ambulance. So it should be here tomorrow night.
Yay. Are you going to drive it around town?
Yeah, will you drive it by all our houses so we can see it?
Yeah, make sure you honk.
Arc.
Honk, sirens. We'll bring all the kids out.
Mm-hmm.
Just do your own little parade.
Okay.
Thank you.
A one vehicle parade.
And we'll need it for the fire truck day. Sherry said she just bought you too.
I'll remind everyone that honking when it's not necessary is technically a violation of the code.
Always necessary.
So just sirens.
Okay. The fire engine's like 2 years out, so we got time.
Oh gosh. Okay. Anything else? Oh,
If I'm not stealing your thunder, Mayor, I know last week we congratulated Desiree, so maybe, or this week you go. Okay, congratulations, Mike, for being in the 39 under 39 and for, getting married.
Thank you.
It's been a big week for this guy.
Yeah.
Big week.
yes. Congratulations. Yeah, that's right. He's a married man.
Yep.
All right. All right. And yes, Mike, it was great to see you on there. You and Desiree made the city proud.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thank you all for hanging in there. It was a long night for both council and staff. So thank you so much. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Oh, goodness. Okay.
Councilmember Williams, I will move to adjourn. I sort of feel like I do this a lot.
So I was going to start singing 99 bottles of beer on the wall, but. All right.
I'll second Councilmember Boyle.
Somebody doesn't want to hear me sing. All right. So if there's no objection, the meeting is adjourned at 8:58 p.m.